You're watching Education for Health Professional Regulators of Ontario, colleges under the Regulated Health Professions Act. Richard Steinica is a senior partner of Steinica Mikura LeBlanc, and he practices exclusively in the area of professional regulation. Richard is a noted author of the Complete Guide to the Regulated Health Professions Act, which, because of its comprehensive nature, has been cited by courts and tribunals, even in cases dealing with non-health professions. Marshall Molesky is the past president of the Federation of Health Regulatory Colleges of Ontario, and he serves as Chief Executive Officer and Registrar of the Ontario College of Pharmacists. Join Marshall and Richard now as Marshall poses a number of important questions on behalf of those of us who want to know more about regulating healthcare practitioners in Ontario.
Richard, what are the mandates of the 7 statutory committees of the RHPA colleges?
Well, each committee has a role. The executive committee essentially supports council. The registration committee deals with challenging applications for registration. The Inquiries, Complaints, and Reports Committee looks into concerns about individual practitioners, and if they think the concern is serious, they send it either to the Discipline Committee to adjudicate professional misconduct or incompetence, or to the Fitness to Practice Committee to adjudicate incapacity or impairment. The Quality Assurance Committee engages in proactive regulation to enhance the practice of all members of the profession, and the Patient Relations Committee enhances communications between practitioners and the public.
Can you categorize the regulatory activities of colleges?
I like to say that colleges engage in 4 fundamental or core activities. The first is restrictive regulation, preventing people from doing things unless they are registered with the college. Reactive regulation responds to concerns about individual practitioners. Proactive regulation deals with everyone in the profession, try to enhance the quality of practice. Transparent regulation is about being as open as possible in everything the college does.
Richard, the first thing you mentioned was restrictive regulation. That sounds like a bad thing. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that people need to be registered with the college in order to do certain things safely. There are certain things that are just too risky for the public if they are done by someone who is not trained, who is not regulated. And that's what we're talking about.
Tell me about the protected title provisions.
Each college has a title that is limited or restricted to members of their profession, nor can anyone else who's not registered with them hold out and pretend to be a member of that college. Similarly, except for certain listed colleges, even if you have a PhD, you cannot use the title doctor when you are performing health-related activities. And these rules are enforced by the courts either through a prosecution or an injunction. The reason for this restriction is to prevent the public from being misled as to someone's qualifications or their registration status.
Ontario was the innovator in Controlled Act approach to healthcare. Other provinces have since followed suit. Can you comment on that?
Before the RHPA, the basic model was that you had an exclusive scope of practice that no one else could do. This was viewed as being too restrictive, and so now there are a list of 13 procedures that are dangerous that you can't do without legal authority. For example, communicating a diagnosis, performing an internal procedure, or administering a substance by injection or inhalation, or prescribing or dispensing a drug. There are different ways in which one can receive authorization to perform these acts. For example, members of colleges are given authorized acts that they can do by virtue of being a member of that college. Other people can be delegated acts by a person who is authorized to perform the Controlled Act. Or there's some exemptions in the minister's regulation. For example, acupuncture, certain people can do acupuncture. And then there's some exceptions in the legislation. For example, a member of a family can help a family member do their routine activities of living, like administering an insulin injection.
Why do you say that the registration process is a form of restrictive regulation?
Because the registration process limits who can become a member of the profession, who can be a practitioner. And so the college looks at education and experience and character to assess whether the person is competent and ethical enough to practice the profession. And if they are obviously qualified, the registrar just registers them. And if there's a concern, is sent to the registration committee that determines whether or not they meet those requirements. And if they don't meet a requirement, should they be given an exemption for that requirement because they are otherwise capable of practicing the profession. So it goes through a whole process. It's a paper process that is adjudicated by the registration committee. It's appealable to the appeal board and to the courts. And the Fairness Commissioner ensures that the process is transparent, objective, impartial, and fair.
Thank you.